Hi, my name is John Freeman. I'm the editor of GRANTA magazine, and it's a great pleasure to be here in New York, in Columbia University, with Orhan Pamuk, the Impact Prize-winning and Nobel Prize-winning author of 8 novels, a memoir, and now The Museum of Innocence, a new book which is just out from Knopf here in the U.S. and will be published in January by Faber and Faber. And it's quite appropriate to be here. As I was walking into Columbia, I passed a wedding party. As this is a grand love story stretching across 3 decades. And it's a love story between a man and a woman, but also a man and a place, Istanbul. And I wondered if you could talk just a little bit about Istanbul in the 1970s, which is where the book opens and where we start on this very long and wonderful journey.
I don't, on the other hand, want to be deliberately self-conscious about representing Istanbul. I always underline the fact that I am, in the end, a writer who is more focused on human beings. But I came across humanity in Istanbul, so indirectly I am, yes, a writer that also heavily writes about Istanbul. I also argued in my previous autobiographical book on Istanbul, called Istanbul, which is also my autobiography till the age of 22 then, that if you live in a city for quite a long time, that city turns out to be a sort of an index for the emotions we live in the city. Say, a fountain, or a square, or a building reminds us our happy times, manic times, hopeless times, or times we are in love. Arguing that for the insiders, a city gains its depth and meaning through memories, while for outsiders it's something more exotic, something to watch from a distance. But here, obviously, my characters are in love, and the love is troubled, has a melancholy aspect, and I also think that the art of the novel works best if the writer finds a sort of an objective, correlative, this expression of T.S. Eliot, picture to the sentiments of his or her characters. In the end, the sadness of the melancholy love, the sadness of the love of my characters, I would say endure, is represented by the city's landscapes. But this is no accident, because I had this sense of melancholy associated, especially in my childhood in Istanbul. So, in ways, what I wrote about Istanbul in my autobiographical book, now I elaborated more and pinned it more accurately and correctly in a grander scale in this novel, The Museum of Innocence.
Kamal, your main character, is caught between 2 women, a much younger cousin named Fusul, and a woman more of his society, if you say, named Sybil. What is preventing him from making the choice that his heart wants to make?
That of the tradition, and that in fact committing himself through various rituals that society demand of him, that your question is so relevant and so to the heart of this novel, is that actually this novel in a deeper level is about belonging to a society, embracing its rituals, no matter how stupid, how shallow, how pointless and irrelevant these rituals are. My character, Kemal, is, I think, and I argue, a typical Istanbul upper-class bourgeois in the sense that he just follows the rituals of society to belong, rather than he thinks in a logical way that they're necessary. But on the other hand, that desire to belong, or in fact, not to pick up any fights with the community, which lots of majority of the people have in oppressed societies. One's first instinct is not to be rational or follow one's own humor or anger, but just to be follow what everyone else does. And no one breaks an engagement in 1975 just because they fall in love with someone else in Turkey. And that has been not only the Turkish tradition, is the tradition of belonging to a community. And so in whole human history, I would say, modernity is trusting your own individuality and judging the whole world through that. Pre-modern attitude, whether you're posing as an upper-class westernized bourgeois or just a simple person who is not educated, pre-modernity is in fact following the dictum that just belong to the community, everything will sort out itself. And Museum of Innocence is, in the end, deeply about belonging to a community or not, following your love, or as I did in my life, following your desire to be a writer, or following your artistic methods, or just joining the others. In the end, love is a little instrument or excuse to polarize these two attitudes in the novel. I think your question highlights, for me, the fact that in the end, yes, this is a novel of love, and the Museum of Innocence is a novel about love, trying to understand its various aspects, arguing that more or less we feel the same. All human beings are the same, but although human heart is the same everywhere, the way we work out our heart's emotions, desires, is heavily embedded in history, culture, I would say, unfortunately.
Your life has changed quite dramatically in the last 5 years. You've won the Nobel Prize. You were prosecuted under Rule 301 of the Turkish Code. And you've described in other interviews that your method of working is to, in some ways, meander around cities, in this case Istanbul, and take your inspiration when it comes to you. And I imagine that that method of working has been somewhat disrupted by your life in the last 4 or 5 years. And how have you found a kind of way to keep working
in fact, that I survived these 5 years easily or easier, perhaps because I was writing this novel. If every day I wake up and at 7 o'clock on my desk and writing 5 hours and adding 1 page or 1.5 pages to the novel, the rest of the day would be easy for me. The idea that one has to have a peaceful life and then with enjoyment write the novel may be true to me as well, like many novelists. But on the other hand, I have the habit of being able to write in bad times. In fact, writing helps me overcome the hardships of life, whether it's a political pressure, whether it's a personal problem, whether it's a problem of economical problem, whatever. Writing, being away from the daily journalistic imagery always makes me keep going. In fact, that's why I became a novelist, a person who is, although pointing out reality, is partly living in fantasy. I think the desire to write novels is also heavily parallel to be away from present, although the novel may point out contending elements of the present.
This novel and Snow in particular are much more in sort of the present world. They don't have the sort of fantastical sidebars and diversions of the Black Book or My Name is Red and some of your earlier work. And I wonder, did anything change in your thinking as an artist in the mid-2000s? Because these novels do feel very different from what has come
Good
before.
question. I can only answer this. When I was writing my early novels, White Castle, even earlier ones, during the years that I announced to my family and friends that I'm not going to pursue architectural studies and painting, that I'd be a novelist, everyone said, well, you're 25, you can't write novels at this age, what do you know about life? And at that time I would get very angry to these people and saying that novels are not about life, they're about literature. arguing that I love my Borges, I love my Calvino, I love my Kafka. These people don't know anything about literature. That's why they're saying, responding to me, I would say to myself. Now, 35 or 40 years later, I tongue-in-cheek say to myself and to the same people, if those who are alive, that, well, perhaps you were right when you said that when I was 25. Novels are about life, of course. And now I have seen enough of life, and in fact, Museum of Innocence, in that sense, is about the things I have seen in Istanbul between 1975, at that time, as I also point out in the book, I was 23, and the oncoming 2 decades. This book is full of images, experience, little details, social rituals, conventions, lives, weddings, clubs, bars, movie houses, newspapers about...
Even soft drinks.
Yes, or even soft drinks of Istanbul that I have seen. And it was such a joy to write and put them in a shape.